In today's video, guys, we are going to be taking a look at 8 common mistakes that we sometimes make when growing perennials and how to fix them. My name is Marlene. Welcome to my home and garden channel. First of all, let's take a look at what perennials are. And perennials are plants that come back year after year. If you are in a tropical area, you'll notice that they're there all the time and they flower for a particular part of the growing season. These are some beautiful hydrangeas. What happens is that in the winter, they go down like this. They basically are in a dormant state. They look like they may be dead, but they're not. If you look close enough, you'll see that there's some signs of life in there. The buds are going to come out, and they come out for us every spring. And it is just always such a wonderful sight to see. These are they right here when they were springing back out. These over here are some coneflowers, same situation again, but quite often these will sometimes cut them all the way back down almost to ground level, so you won't see as much of them because these are more herbaceous types plants. They're not shrubs like the hydrangea you just saw a moment ago, but either way they go down and then they come back for us in the more colder climates that get hard freezes. This is a daylily right here, similar situation, and this is one of the most favored perennials in the United States. Bear in mind that bulbs too are also considered as perennials. These are some daffodils, one of my favorites, and it blooms in the early spring after planted in the fall. And over here, these are some iris bulbs, and there are quite a bit of these over here. I've had them for many years, and they've spread out, and I like them like that, and they're perfectly fine being that way. But we'll take a look at that same issue right now, and that is dividing perennials. Quite often, we are not dividing them out, and there are many plants that don't like that, many perennials. These are some salvias that I have right here, and this one is maybe about 4 feet across. It is so large, guys, and you can tell typically with these, if you look in the center, it looks almost like a hollow in there. That is telling you that the plant is basically begging to be divided. Ornamental grasses behave in a similar way too. They kind of get out of shape. That kind of nice dome that you're used to seeing, it kind of gets a little haphazard. And, you're going to see a hole in the center of these as well. This is actually a miscanthus zebra ornamental grass, and I think it is so beautiful. And, they do bloom as well, too, but they're wind pollinated, so they tend to look like this. You don't see like pretty, petals that we're used to seeing, but they're beautiful in their own way. And I really love them, and I did a previous video on that. These are some hostas over here, and these don't behave in a similar way where you're going to see a hole in the center, but sometimes you may see less productivity in terms of, like blooms on them if they've been there for a while and they have not been divided. Here I'm just trimming back some of the spent blooms on there, but you get the idea, guys. They don't all get that hole in the center, but after a while, you will need to divide them. And let's take a look at the dividing process. So there are different things you can use. These are the 3 main ones that typically are used. You have a trowel right here, and if your plant is a little bit smaller, this may work. You just use it and split the plant, and then you can use that, or you can use a spade right here for the larger ones like the salvia I just showed you. The edge of it is more of a kind of a curved shape with a little point, while the shovel is a little different. It is flat at the bottom. Either one can work, but me personally, I prefer to use the trowel for the smaller ones and the spade for the larger ones. And just to show you as an example here, this is just a few days after I see it's coming up in the center, so it's doing its own thing, so I'm not going to mess with it. Plus the season is off right now anyway, but you would just go in with your spade and just stick it all the way down in the soil after you've watered it, of course, and then you just ease it out, and you can get multiple plants from that, and you put them in different areas, of course. Now typically the best time to divide your perennials would be in the fall season, because you go in and you divide them out, put them in their new areas, of course, maybe about 4 to 6 weeks before the first hard freeze, so they start to develop a little bit and then they go to sleep. Of course, you also have the option to divide your perennials in the springtime, the very early spring. So when you put them after the hard freeze, they start to develop their roots and their leaves, and then they will flower for you in the spring and summer. Moving on to our next one that happens sometimes is wrong location. So sometimes we make the mistake of putting them in the wrong location. These right here, these are all sun lovers. So they are good buddies. They work really well together, and they all love the sunshine, and it's just so wonderful to see them in full bloom. And this is a recent video I did. These are actually one of my neighbors, that I gave you a garden tour a few seasons ago. and I'll link it at the end for you or in the description box. And over here, these are some hostas. These actually are shade-loving plants. So if you put them in an area that does not like that, then they're not going to do very well. They may get away with part shade, but they prefer shade. And usually the little things that come along, little labels, will give you information about your plant, how much sunlight it needs, and the growing habits and all of that. So be sure to look at those. They can be part sun to 4 to 6 hours of sunlight per day, while sun is 6 or more, and of course the shade is less than 4 hours. So just take a look at those so you can figure out the best places to put them. Also, location has to do with the heights of your plant. Again, these are some coneflowers right here. They typically grow for me usually about 2.5 to 3.5 feet, sometimes a little bit taller. But these, you would not want to place them towards the front of your garden unless that's the only thing that you have there. If you have annuals that are there that are going to be lower, or other perennials that are lower, you want to put them further back so that way they're not going to be blocking the other plants. And what happens too is we get tempted that way because they come up later in the season, but still you have to think of the overall time frame of the garden, what comes out first, what is next, and then you'll know how to place them. But typically the taller ones will go towards the back. So here we have some petunias. These are annuals, and they are loving it right here. They're at the front, so they don't have to worry about being blocked out when the coneflower comes up, which it did. And so they're perfectly fine working together that way. Third common mistake is ignoring growing zones, which basically means putting them in areas where they're not going to do well because of the weather. And you typically want to go online and check to see, your zip code or where you live, what your growing zone is. Because this is cordyland that I'm showing you here. It's a thriller plant in the center of these containers right here. It's very beautiful, but it is a tropical plant. So if you live in a more temperate area where you get hard freezes, this plant is not going to do well. In its natural environment right here, this is something that we saw in the Bahamas, I think 2 years ago. They're flourishing right here. They love it, and they're going to be there year after year after year. But of course, if you're growing this, again, you even see it has flowers and seeds forming right there, which I've never really seen over here because they don't, get a chance to get to that point. But they're treated as annuals in hard freeze areas. Moving on to the next one, and that would be not planting perennials for year-round color. And even right here, you have the serendipity allium right there in full bloom. The salvia, the first set of blooms were earlier in the season. And then we have some verbena right here. So there's always something. And then the daisies are behind there, the pretty cream-colored ones. So there's always something blooming just in this one little spot right here that's coming up. You have plants that also even bloom in the cold months, like in the winter. These right here are some hellebores, and you can see the colors. They're white first, and they get cream color, and then they get green as time progresses. But they're going to be there for you during the winter and early spring. And here are some pink ones, guys. And as you can see, again, as they get older, they become green, just like the leaves. And flowers really are modified leaves anyway, so it definitely makes sense. And speaking of early spring, these are some creeping phlox that I have. I've had them for many years, and these come up early spring. Beautiful ground cover. I took some of it out because it was kind of taking over my flower bed. But you can see right here, there's a butterfly on there, and he was really early for the season because normally butterflies come out in my area, usually around, I'd say, late April. This was late March, and he was already out. But these plants will provide food for them, for the early ones. And like your bees typically are the earliest ones to come out in my garden, so that will be there for them. Now, like in the fall season and late summer, you have like asters. So this is a great choice for late season color. When many of the plants have, faded out by this time of their blooming, asters are great, as are stonecrop, which is the one you see right there, the white color. They turn orange afterwards. And you can have different types of coneflowers too later in the season to provide color. And of course, there's always beautiful chrysanthemums. Some people treat them as annuals. If the weather is fairly mild, because I'm in growing zones 8, these are perennials in my area. So if you have them in larger containers or in flower beds, you can repot them after you bought them at the garden center. They will come back for you year after year. And I've done a previous video about that as well too. You can take a look at my video tab and it'll show there for you. Just cover them over with some mulch when you cut them down low in the late fall, and they will come back for you. So you have seasonal colors. Just wanted to take a moment, guys, to invite you to subscribe to my channel if you have never done so before. I do lots of gardening topics, tips, and tours, and it's always so exciting to share ideas with fellow gardeners. We have a community right here. So if you've never signed up before, it's free. Just go ahead and hit that subscribe button, tap the bell twice, and you'll be good to go. The next common mistake is not keeping up with maintenance of perennials. Because annuals, they come up, they're out in a year and they're gone, nothing to worry about. You just take them up. When you have perennials, you have to go in and do things like deadheading them. These are some roses that I have right here. And when you deadhead roses especially, they absolutely love it. But you're taking off a little bit or a lot. Now, these are some tea roses, or I should say hybrid roses over here, and they smell so wonderful, but they do take a little bit more maintenance. They're more susceptible to pests and diseases, like the black spot disease is a fungal disease. You'll see different types of bugs come over on them when the weather gets hot in the summertime. And like in the southeastern United States where I am, it tends to be susceptible to those things even more so. Another option might be, or a better option might be, knockout roses for you if you have less time as far as maintenance goes for your roses, but they are not, without getting some type of issues as well too. You can also get bugs and diseases on them, but it's less prone to that. But again, in the hot summer, you may notice that sometimes. So one important thing to mention is that it is good to feed your perennials. Like these roses, they love this right here. When your plants are stronger and healthier, they're better able to fight off pests and diseases, because when the plants get weak, it's like it attracts them in and it makes the plant even more sick. A low maintenance plant here, perennial, would be like these Asiatic lilies right here. But what I will say is that their bloom time is not as long. You may only get them for a few weeks, so do bear that in mind. Like these Shasta daisies right here, these give you a much longer bloom time. So you'll have them for several weeks blooming in your garden, and it works out easily. These coneflowers are another one. You saw me show them before. I love them because they last for a very long time in the garden. They're not the first ones out there, but once they come up, usually by late spring, early summer, they're going to take you right up until the fall season. And even after that, the dried flowers, they add interest and they feed the winter birds. These over here are some iris. So bear in mind, guys, that your bulbs, they also need maintenance as well. So here I'm just deadheading them, taking off the spent blooms off of there. And iris is one of the most watched videos on my channel, so you can check it out if you've never done so before. I will link the iris playlist at the end of this video for you. But yes, guys, you also need to deadhead them and, just look for any pests and diseases. It doesn't have a lot of them, but these are either spider mites or aphids that are on here, so you have to treat those as well, which will be discussed in the playlist. The next common mistake is not mulching. So mulching is so important for your plants, guys. It helps to suppress weeds because it kind of smothers them out. It also helps to retain moisture in the warmer months, and it helps to keep them warm in the winter. And there are so many different choices of mulch out there, guys. You have red mulch, you have cypress mulch, you have black mulch, you have pine bark mulch, you have pine bark nuggets. There's so many different ones. The only ones that I don't like so much, and I like using brown mulch. Been using that a lot recently. I don't so much like the ones that are made of rubber, or the ones that have the dyes on them that, they fade very quickly, and, it's just probably not the best choice, but it depends on your preference. So over here, we did this recently where we, did a makeover of our front garden, and I will link this video at the end so you can take a look to see if you are wanting to see the steps that we went through to get it from point A to point B. Moving on to the next one, and that would be not staking your slender perennials. So these are some beautiful gladiolas right here. It's a beautiful, I think that's maybe like a salmon color. When I bought it, it looked different on the package. It was a little bit more red than this kind of orangey salmon looking color here. But I was perfectly fine with it. It's a beautiful color. I love it. But you'll notice that it has a tall, slender flower spike, but it is a little bit heavy, when they open up, and it weighs down the plant. So you'll want to go in and stake them or just support them with something else. It can be something small like what I put here initially when it was just coming up. It needs to be something that's tall enough that goes up and gives it enough support. And of course, you can use stakes, you can use trellises. There are many different types that you can use, but it's going to help your plant because, they can snap off and bend over when it gets a little bit windy, and we don't want to have them doing that. Over here, I did a better job because these were available to me, and these are going to open up and just look fabulous. And these ones right here, guys, I've had them for quite a few years. They grow to be about 5 feet tall, so they definitely on this side have to have some support. Peonies are another one again too. Beautiful, beautiful perennials. And they're kind of bushy, but what happens is that the flower heads are kind of heavy. So you'll see them nodding down, and sometimes, they can snap off or just flop over, especially after it rains, and it just doesn't look really good. Doesn't do the plant a lot of justice. So it's good to get some support for them. And I will link these in the description box below. We can get these online if you're wanting to get any of those to help to support your perennials. Moving on to the next one, and that would be not leaving enough space between them. In other words, putting them too close together. Here, my husband and I, we were planting some perennials for one of our dear friends. And as you can see, he made sure to put enough space between them because these spread out, guys. Perennials, they tend to do that. This is probably going to be maybe about 3 feet across. The salvia, not as much a purple one. So they combine really well together with enough space. And as they say about perennials, the first year they sleep, second year they creep, and the third year they leap. So bear those things in mind when you consider what you're going to do with them. And what I would say is that, flowers, they always want to give us their best. They really, really do. They just need a little bit of care just to start them off in the right place and just tweak them as you go along. And you learn by doing, and that's what gardening is all about. And I always say, guys, to enjoy the process. So if you like this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up on the way out. And you can check out the videos that I'll link at the end for you. So thank you so much for watching. And I do hope to see you in the next video. Take care. Happy gardening.